Third way, nature necessitates and creates. This assertion contains many impossibilities. We will illustrate three of them. First impossibility: if the creation of beings, especially living creatures, is not attributed to the eternal Creator's pen of destiny and his all-seeing power with wisdom and artistry, but rather to blind, deaf, and thoughtless nature and force, then one must either accept that a. Nature has embedded countless invisible machines and printing presses within everything to create, or b. that every single thing harbors a power and wisdom capable of creating and managing the universe. To elaborate, we will use an example. Consider how the reflections and images of the sun appear in tiny glass fragments and droplets on the earth. If these miniature suns, which are mere reflections, are not attributed to the actual sun in the sky, one would have to accept the absurd notion that each tiny glass piece, which cannot even accommodate the tip of a matchstick, contains a natural, inherent, and independent sun with all the attributes of the actual sun. One must imagine as many suns as there are particles that make up the glass. Similarly, if beings and living creatures are not directly attributed to the reflections of the eternal sun, which is the Almighty God's names, one must accept that in each entity, especially in each living being, there is an unlimited power and will, an infinite knowledge and wisdom, essentially a deity. Such a belief is the most absurd and mythical of all impossibilities in the universe. A person who attributes the artistry of the Creator of the universe to the imaginary, insignificant, and mindless nature shows that they are 100 times more senseless and irrational than an animal. Second impossibility: if these incredibly orderly, balanced, artistic, and wise beings are not attributed to a being with infinite power and wisdom, but rather to nature, one must accept that within each particle of soil there are as many machines and printing presses as all the factories and presses in world. Only then could that soil produce and bring forth the countless flowers and fruits for which it serves as a nursery and loom. Because it is observed that a piece of soil serving as a flower pot can produce the various shapes and natures of all the flowers whose seeds are sequentially planted in it. If this process is not attributed to the all-powerful one, then one must accept that in that piece of soil there are invisible, separate, natural machines for each flower, recognizing the DNA of the flower, understanding the precise nutrients it needs, knowing the biology of each type of flower, etc. Otherwise, this condition cannot occur because, like sperm and eggs, seeds also have common substances. They are made up of disorganized, shapeless mixtures like hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen, DNA, RNA. Moreover, air, water, heat, and light also flow in a simple and mindless manner to everything. The emergence of those countless flowers from that soil in an orderly and artistic fashion necessitates that there are as many unseen and small-scale printing presses and factories in that soil as there are in world. Only then could it produce such a variety of vegetables, fruits, and plants. Thus, understand how far the notion of denying God and attributing everything to nature strays from rationality. See how those who consider nature as a creator are far from reason and science, and laugh and scorn at the absurd fairy tales they adopt as their belief. If you say, if beings are attributed to nature, such astonishingly absurd and impossible scenarios arise. How do these impossibilities disappear when attributed to the one and unique being? How do those impossibilities transform into easy chain of necessities? The answer is, just as the reflection of the sun shows its brilliance effortlessly in every tiny particle and vast sea surface, if the connection with the sun is cut off, one would have to accept the impossible notion of a natural sun in each particle. Similarly, if each being is directly attributed to the one and unique Creator, Everything it needs can be provided with utmost ease and connection, transforming what seems impossible into a simple necessity. If that connection is severed, if the order is disrupted, if each being is left to itself or attributed to nature, one must accept the impossible notion that a living being like a fly has created its own wondrous body, a miniature of the universe, with all its intricate mechanisms, and that the blind nature within it possesses the power and wisdom to create and manage the universe. This is not just one, but thousands of impossibilities. In short, just as it is impossible and irrational for the necessary being to have a partner or equivalent, it is equally impossible and irrational for others to interfere in his lordship and creation. The difficulty in the second impossibility is as follows. If the creation of everything is attributed to the one and only Creator, explaining the creation of everything in the universe becomes as easy as explaining the creation of one single thing. However, if creation is attributed to causes and nature, explaining the creation of even a single thing becomes as difficult as explaining the creation of everything, as has been conclusively proven by numerous and diverse arguments. One such argument is summarized as follows. If a man, as a soldier or official, is connected to a king, the power he derives from that connection allows him to accomplish tasks 100,000 times greater than his own strength. Sometimes, on behalf of the king, he can capture another sovereign. This is because he does not have to carry or provide the necessary resources and power for the tasks he performs and the works he produces. Instead, the king's treasures and the supporting power of the army he relies on provide those resources and strength due to his connection. Thus, the deeds he accomplishes can be as magnificent as the work of a king, and the works he produces can be as marvelous as the deeds of an army. Thanks to this connection, a pine seed the size of a grain of wheat stores the entire program of a mighty pine tree. DNA performs billions of operations within a cell. Lungs take in oxygen from the air. Red blood cells transport that oxygen throughout the body. White blood cells fight against bacteria and viruses, and so forth. If that connection is severed, if that soldier in our example is discharged, then he is obliged to carry the necessary things and strength in his pocket and in his hand to do his tasks. At that time, he can only do as much work as the little power in his hand and the ammunition on his back allow. If he were asked to do the tasks that he used to do very easily in his former condition, of course, he would need to carry the power of an army in his hand and the arsenal of a sovereign's war equipment on his back. Exactly, if the connection with the Creator is severed, organs like the lungs and originally lifeless entities such as erythrocytes, leukocytes, and DNA lose all their functions. In essence, attributing the creation of every entity to the necessary being has a degree of ease equivalent to its necessity. Granting creativity to nature, however, is to accept a level of difficulty tantamount to impossibility and to step outside the realm of reason. Third impossibility. To explain this impossibility, see the following two examples. First example. In a desolate desert, a savage man enters a palace adorned with all the works of civilization. He sees thousands of items made with flawless craftsmanship. Due to his savagery and ignorance, he starts investigating, thinking, this palace, with everything in it, must have been made by someone from inside, without any external intervention. No matter what he examines, his primitive mind cannot fathom that anything inside could have made them. Then he finds a book detailing the construction program, inventory, and management laws of the palace. Although this book, without hands, eyes, or tools, cannot by any means construct or adorn the palace like the other items inside, he is forced to conclude that, relative to other items, this book is associated with the entire palace because it contains scientific laws. He thus absurdly declares,
"This palace was built, organized, and decorated by this book,"
turning his ignorance into nonsensical speech worthy of fools and drunkards. Similarly, an equally primitive person enters this world palace, which is infinitely more orderly, perfect, and filled with miraculous wisdom than the example palace. In his denial of the eternal Creator, he sees a set of divine laws, a registry of divine actions called nature, or science, which is mistakenly and improperly named. He says, "Since these things require a cause, and nothing else seems to be related to them as this book is, this book, despite being blind, mindless, and powerless, must have made the palace." To this we say, "You foolish, deluded drunkard, lift your head from the swamp of nature and look around. See the eternal craftsman, whom all beings, from particles to planets, testify to and point towards with their distinct languages and gestures. Recognize the reflection of the eternal artist who crafted that palace and wrote its program in that book. Heed his decree, listen to the book he sent, and save yourself from such absurd talk." Second example. A savage man enters a magnificent barracks and watches the highly organized army's movements and drills. He sees a battalion, regiment, or division stand up, sit down, or march at the command of a single officer. His primitive and crude mind, unable to grasp the concept of a commander managing an army through state regulations and the king's laws, imagines that the soldiers are connected by strings and marvels at these imaginary strings. Then he goes to a large mosque like Hagia Sophia on a Friday and joins the congregation. He sees the congregation standing, bowing, prostrating, and sitting together at the imam's voice. Unable to comprehend the spiritual laws of religion and the commands from the lawgiver, he thinks that the congregation is physically connected by strings and believes these strings manipulate them. He leaves with a notion so absurd that even the most primitive creatures would laugh at him. Similarly, a person carrying the crude idea of nature and denial of God enters this world, a grand barracks of the eternal and everlasting King, and a perfect mosque of the eternal deity. He perceives the invisible principles governing the universe as physical laws, and attributes divine power to these laws, calling them nature or science, and believes they have the power to create. This is a notion far more primitive than the example of the savage man. In conclusion, the imagined entity called nature or science by those who attribute everything to it, if it has any external reality, can at best be an art, but not the artist, an embroidery, but not the embroiderer, a set of laws, but not the lawgiver, a creation, but not the creator. It might be a veil of created magnificence, but it cannot be the creator. It could be an entity brought forth by external influences, but it cannot be a creative agent. It is a law, not power. It cannot be omnipotent. It is a means and instrument, not a source. The essence. Since beings exist, only 4 paths can be considered for the existence of something. 3 of these paths have been definitively disproven with 3 clear impossibilities each. Therefore, the validity of the 4th path, the path of unity, is clearly evident. This 4th path unambiguously shows the necessity and ease of attributing everything directly to the one and unique Creator, who controls the entire universe and the earth. O unfortunate human who attributes everything to causes, nature and science! Since everything, including nature, is created, and it is an artistic design and constantly being renewed, and since every cause, like its result, is created artistically, and since a thing's existence depends on many conditions, then surely there exists an absolute power who created nature and that cause. Why would he need to involve helpless intermediaries in his lordship and creation? Absolutely not. He directly creates the result along with the cause, showing the manifestations of his names and wisdom by placing an apparent proximity between cause and result. He uses nature and causes as a veil for his power to explain apparent defects, mercilessness, and deficiencies in things, thus preserving his majesty. Consider, is it easier for a watchmaker to first make the watch's parts and then assemble them, or to create a marvelous machine within those parts to later make the watch? Isn't the second possibility beyond reason? Now judge with your conscience. Or is it easier for a scribe to write a book directly with ink, pen, and paper, or to invent a writing machine inside the paper, ink, and pen, more artistic and complex than the book itself, and then expect the senseless machine to write the book on its own? Isn't the second scenario 100 times harder than writing the book? If you say, yes, inventing such a machine would be much more difficult, more impossible than writing the book itself, then, O foolish one, attributing the creation of beings and the wise order and artistry in the universe to causes and nature which are devoid of knowledge, wisdom, and power is 1,000 times more unreasonable and absurd than the examples above. Therefore, acknowledge the truth and give up the superstitious ideas about nature. See the divine art in nature, learn from it, understand the perfect power and wisdom of the eternal Creator, and become a believer. All glory and praise be to God. We believe in Him and trust in Him. Amen. The concept of attributing creation to blind nature is addressed and refuted with the third path. By illustrating the impossibilities of such attribution, the note leads us to acknowledge the necessity of attributing creation to an all-powerful and all-wise Creator. Through clear examples and logical reasoning, the impossibility of nature or causes being the true creators is demonstrated. Instead, everything points to the one true Creator, reinforcing the path of unity and divine oneness.